Well, hello and welcome to my YouTube channel. It's really lovely to have you here. And today I am going to be talking about something really magical that happened in the comment section of the Barbara Hepworth video, which is a couple of weeks ago. Now, if, like me, like this, somebody trying to create this kind of space, which is where we can discuss creativity and how essential that is to our beings. We can discuss ancestry and the way that we learnt crafts and how we can pass them on, about how crafts have traditionally been undervalued and what we can change about that, and all of these kinds of things. If you're trying to create this space for discussion, it is wonderful to get comments. I mean, comments are the lifeblood of any YouTube channel. It's not just about me, it's about the conversations. But when people start to support each other and to have separate conversations within the comment threads, that's where the magic happened. So a couple of weeks ago, was talking about Barbara Hepworth and her idea that the importance of creativity was so large that it didn't matter whether she was creating something big every day. It just mattered that she was doing something. So it could be a 5-minute sketch. It could be arranging flowers. It just had to be something where she was looking at the world and creating beauty. So underneath that film, somebody posted a comment, and the comment was about how 12 children, domestic responsibilities, obviously, lack of space, lack of time, not much energy to spare, and that for a time her creativity had kind of been buried underneath that, but that she had remembered its importance, and in exactly the way that Barbara Hepworth describes, she had brought it back 5 minutes at a time, 5 minutes at a time, sort of rekindling that creative flame until it was back, and she felt whole again. It was so important. Now, someone else came along and read that comment, someone who has 11 children, who is deep in the kind of the overbusy, no space. Her craft room had been taken over to be a storage space for food. There was never any space on the table. And she had felt that she had lost something quite difficult to define, but was unsure that she would ever be able to get it back. And she took inspiration and support from this other woman's experience, that yes, it was possible, and that yes, she could go into the world and bit by bit by bit by bit regain this bit of her. And that is what I think is magical about groups who care about these things, from all different walks of life, all different neurodivergences, all different human designs, all different personalities, can get together and speak about what they have found, talk of experience, talk about ancestry, talk about all of these important things. You have a dog barking? Well, just one bark, that's fine. So what I thought I would do today is to expand that talk in a very practical way and talk about 3 things that I turn to when I'm going through a period of time where maybe I'm ill or I have no energy or things are really busy, and there would be a likelihood of the creative side of my life just getting a little bit swamped. Now, I must say that this conversation, it did not start out as a conversation about creativity. It is inspired by a chat that I had with a friend who had lost her reading mojo. She had been a really avid reader, loved reading. It was sort of like her main escape was to read and to really get into books. And then, you know, she had children and full-time job, and somehow the reading was the thing that slipped. You know, she would get to the end of the day, she'd have her book, and she would be asleep by the time she got to the end of the first page. I think this is a really, really common thing. So we were chatting about how she could reclaim that now that she does have more time, now the children are more independent. She had found that she couldn't get back into it. So we were talking about sort of strategies to get that. So this bit of the talk, although it's very much focused on my crafts, it's also anything else that you want to take back up. So my first tip is to find something that's a bit of a page turner. Now, the project that I have on the go at the moment, which for me is a page turner, is this little needlepoint cushion. Now, you've seen this before, and this is a needlepoint that I'm doing with natural dyes. I started off with all of the colours that we did in the food waste dye workshop that I did in the studio, which is my online membership. And we got amazing colours. So I thought, well, what I'll do is I'll just make them into this needlepoint. So that is, you know, most of these colours. And then I'm adding in some that I am dyeing at the moment. So this is gorse. This is a fresh indigo. Just adding in the colours. But the wonderful thing about this project is that each of the squares doesn't take very much time. You know, they are very, very simple things to do, but they are addictive. The way that the colours change depending on what you're sticking them next to is addictive. And that kind of thing of, oh, I'll just pick it up and do one more square or one more triangle, or just add on a little bit. For me, that is a page turner, and this is why it's actually coming on pretty fast. So it's only going to be like that wide, you know, because I want it to be square. I'm going to have to obviously steam it to get it back square because I'm not using a frame. So really, you know, I am, I think, probably approaching halfway finished, and that is in maybe a month of doing other things. But this is always there, lying around somewhere in my space, just for me to pick up and do some squares. And you can see I'm not one of these kind of very neat people with my wool. What I do with the embroidering is each of the skeins is a loop. I just snip through it, and that then gives me, you know, that. So that would be my skein there, and then I'll just do it like that. Take the top of it, which is the bit with all of the string, and I will just cut through it, and then that's the exact lengths that I need. Then I just pull them out, and it does mean that they get quite messy looking, but actually they're all very, very easy to untangle. See? So that is my page turner. So if you are putting it into sort of like a reading analogy, choose something that you're really going to enjoy, that's light, that's a page turner, that is going to keep you going, keep you waiting to see what happens the next day. My second tip, I've just managed to drop part of it here, is don't make it a performance. Keep it as simple as possible. If you are lacking in energy, have a project that doesn't require an awful lot of decisions, because decisions are tiring. Have something that is going to be like a quick win. So, for example, and I've just started doing this in the studio because I kind of like learned that small quick win projects are so valuable in all of our crafting lives, not just people who are starting out, but people who, you know, they want to try a new technique, or they are going through a really busy period of stuff, or they want something to take on holiday or whatever. Having these small, self-contained, easy win, quick to finish projects is so valuable. So in the Studio Club, we are just about to try out this, goodness, managed to drop it, quilting, felting kind of technique, which gives this puckered marks on the back. And this is my well-travelled sample for making an envelope. That is going to be like the big project, because it's based on the transfers that we were looking for. It was kind of like a family project. It's quite meaty. But I decided that alongside that, and using exactly the same techniques but on a much smaller project, I would do something so we could all make a brooch. And the joy of this is it's really small, it's really quick, it's exactly the same technique of making this sort of felted bit, which is just a circle, but it means that you can do it really sort of like, all of the supplies fit into one of these bags. So most people, I think, will be able to find the supplies in their home if they craft at all. But for people who are starting out or wanting to go on holiday with it or whatever, I put together a few of these little supply things. But it shows you just how small, whoops, that's brooch back gone down there. 3 bits of fabric, some embroidery threads, some old, this is like a cotton lace making thread, but it could be any thread, a needle, a pin, and a brooch back. And that just all tucks up into here. It's very, very simple to do. It would just take a couple of hours. It's nice and simple, very portable. So make it as easy as possible for you to do your crafting. And ideally have it in, that kind of scale, that kind of things, so that you've got something and it's finished and it looks beautiful. But you can make it your own. It's not like a kit. Sometimes kits and everybody's making exactly the same. And I don't find that as rewarding as having something like this, where you've got all of the full instructions of how to do it. But when it comes to the decoration, you've got a little bit of artistic license. You can choose your colours and your placements and all of that kind of thing. And all of these stitches we covered earlier on in the course. So there are videos about how to do all of the stitches. So it's all nice and very, very simple. Don't make it a performance, make it very simple. If you are sort of like putting this into the book analogy, read a book that you already have. Read a book that you can carry with you, or have it on a Kindle, or whatever it is that is going to make it simpler for you to do it. Reread something that you've loved in the past. So the third thing I would say is make it something that you really want. As you can see, I always have several projects on the go, and they do fit into these things. So one of the things that has brought me so much joy in the last few months is wearing hand knitted socks. I didn't appreciate the difference between like just socks and things that I had knitted for myself out of lovely wool. So this is my kind of like car knitting or appointment knitting or whatever, or Zoom knitting at the moment, and it is a sock. Right. So I've got to the stage where I now know the pattern, so I don't need the pattern, and here we are going round and round and round in my sock, and I'm itching to wear these socks because this is lovely soft wool. It's part alpaca, I think. And then I've got some nice bright red actual sock wool for the toes and the heels, which get more wear. And already I can see them, and I can see them on my feet. So that is a perfect project for me, because the actual knitting of the sock, as you can see, it's got nice long turnover here, so I can make it into a cuff. That's really quite simple and straightforward. And it's very containable because I just have it in this old sponge bag as my project bag. So that's what I would say. Choose something that you're actually wanting to make, that you can see the end result, and that's going to carry you forward. Sometimes when people are busy. There's an element of should comes into activities, you know, or if you're ill, the shame and the guilt and things makes you feel that you should be doing really worthy kinds of things. And that, I think, is always a mistake. You know, do not go back to creativity with the mending pile. Choose something that is going to light you up, that you actually want, that's small enough for you to complete and you to see progress as you do it. And my final thing, this is nothing to do with my 3 tips, though maybe it is. Don't do anything because other people are doing it. So it's so easy in media, particularly sort of like social media, there are sudden trends. Everybody seems to be knitting a particular thing or sewing a particular thing. You know, a technique becomes really, really fashionable and beautiful and is photographed in beautiful ways. And, you know, new knitting patterns come out and they're photographed in such amazing ways and they look wonderful. And you think, oh, I really should do that. It's so tempting. In my experience, these are always the projects that fail, that I fail to finish because I have been pulled along on somebody else's passion project. I have been pulled along by the beautiful images or by the fact that everybody is doing it, so therefore it must be valuable. But then when I've got a third of the way through, that is not enough. And that's when I have let things fail. So things like the heirloom quilt cardigan, that was one of those ones for me. Loved the look of the design. Everybody was doing it. It looked such a fun thing. And then when I made it, there were very specific things that I really didn't like. And I now have an almost finished cardigan that I don't want to finish because I would never wear. And I'm intending to unpick it and turn it into a blanket, which will make a very lovely blanket, but that's then tedious work. And it's going back over something that was a bit of a failure. And there is a lot of guilt and those kind of feelings involved in it. So what I'd say is, first of all, don't go after those really popular projects unless you are really sure that the wish to do them is coming from you. And secondly, don't, as something that you are returning to creativity, do not start with something that has any guilt or shame or bad feelings associated with it. Just leave them for a time when your creativity is overflowing, isn't needing bolstered up, because there is nothing kills creativity like a feeling of should or guilt or regret at having wasted supplies or any of these things. Go for the joy, go for the page turners, go for the simplicity, and go for the quick wins. And let me know what you're going to make, because I would love to know. And until next week, bye-bye. Oh, I should say, I'm not very good at marketing, am I? That I did a masterclass this week on reclaiming time, remembering time for creativity. And there is a replay available for limited time, so you can get that directly underneath this video. But I will see you next week. Bye-bye.